Good morning. Welcome to week 2. This is our Aperture and Depth of Field Photoshop assignment. Hopefully you enjoyed taking your photos this week. Now we're going to take a moment to create a professional Photoshop document. And hopefully this video will help you successfully complete this week's assignment. To open Photoshop, I'm going to go to the bottom left-hand corner of my computer to my Start menu. I'm just going to type in Photoshop, and it'll pop up, Adobe Photoshop CS6. If you're having trouble finding it like that, you can always go to your Start menu and search through, find the Adobe Master Collection CS6 folder, and scroll down and open Adobe Photoshop CS6. I'm going to begin by by creating a new document, File New. I'm going to name this document Chris Rubin, Aperture, and Depth of Field. I encourage you to put your own name at the beginning of this so that you know that it's your assignment. And I'm going to set this document up so it's 10 inches wide and 7 inches tall. I'm going to select OK, and my document's going to pop up, and I'm ready to get started. The first thing I'm going to do today is I'm going to create documents easily and make it look really nice on my document. To do that, I'm going to use my rectangle tool. I'm going to grab my rectangle tool, and I'm going to grab a fill color. Any color is fine. It really does not matter. I'm going to use magenta for now. But I do want to make sure I've got no stroke color. So again, make no stroke color. It should be that blank white box with a red line through it. It's right here. You can click on it if you need to. So now I'm ready to draw my rectangle. To do that, I'm going to line it up right here at about a quarter of an inch on my horizontal ruler and about a quarter of an inch here on my vertical ruler. So you can see those lines on my horizontal and vertical rulers. I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to draw my rectangle. Okay. And there we go. So there's my rectangle. Now, if you're having trouble getting your rectangle to be perfectly square, it's okay. You can always, with the rectangle tool, highlight up here where it says width. It's in pixels right now, but you can always change it to 3 inches wide. Nothing changes, obviously, because we already set it. But if I change my height to 2 inches, you can see that the height changes. So I can change it back to 3 inches. And that's a nice, easy way to resize a rectangle. Instead of drawing each rectangle individually, I'm just going to start to duplicate them. So to do that, I go to my Layers panel, I right-click, and I select Duplicate Layer. I'm just going to say Rectangle 1 Copy, and I'm going to drag it over. Now I'm going to actually drag it so that they snap together. And once they've snapped together, I'm just going to use my keyboard, and I'm going to use my right arrow on my keyboard, and I'm going to click it 10 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that's just an easy way for me to know that I'm going to have the same separation horizontally and vertically between each of my squares. I'm going to take my Rectangle 1 copy, and I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate that layer again. Select OK, move it over, let them snap together so that they're touching, and then just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I did that by clicking on the right arrow on my keyboard. Now you can see there's more space over here on the right side of my document than on the left. So let's do two things together right now. First, I'm going to highlight all of these squares that I just created. So to do that, I hold down Control on my keyboard, I left click, and it'll highlight each of them. Now I can use I'm just going to use my right arrow key, and I'm sort of nudging my squares so that it's symmetrical, about the same amount of distance on the right as on the left. That looks pretty good. And once I'm happy with that, I'm going to keep these rectangles highlighted, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to duplicate all of those layers. And I'm going to do that so that I can just simply drag these 3 rectangles down. And once they've snapped together vertically, I'm just going to use my down arrow key this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. right? So now again, I have even spacing horizontally and vertically between each of my squares. Now I do have a little bit less room here at the top than I do at the bottom. That's okay, because in my mind I'm going to add down here, identifying about what assignment it is and who I am. So I might leave that space for right now. The next thing I need to do is I need to bring my images in. So to bring my images in, I'm going to open up the folder. I named mine Duck Duck because I took pictures of a duck. And I have mine in order from by f-stop. So this shows one thing in focus with the rest of my background blurry. This shows everything in focus, and these are my ones in between. So I want them to be in that order when I place them on my document. And that's very important for you too. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to grab my rectangle 1. That's up here in the top left. And if you want, you can even rename, just like we did in our previous assignment, your layers. And then let's just see. This is bottom left. Sorry. Bottom center and bottom right. So now I know exactly what I'm adding. And with each image, I always want, for example, the top left, I want this image to go right above that. All right, so you can see I highlighted top left, brought my image in, and now I'm just going to resize this down to 3 inches. It's actually going to be, I'm holding shift on my keyboard so that it stays, it has like the same width and height. But because it's a little bit wider than it is tall, I'm going to take whatever the smaller dimension is, and I'm going to make sure that that's 3 inches, because I don't want it to be smaller than the square that I'm going to place it on. You'll see in a second. So it's 3 inches tall. I'm going to move it up here so that it's on that top right square. You can't see it because it's on top of it. I'm going to hit enter to place it, and then watch this. I go over to my picture, I right click, and I say create clipping mask. Right? And now my image is placed. I can move it to the left or right using my arrow keys so that it's exactly in the position I want it to be. And I'm happy with it right there. So now I'm going to move quickly and I'm going to try and add each of my other images. Right? Notice I was right over top center, so this one's going to place itself over top center. You can always move them after the fact if you need to. So let me get this. I'm changing the height of all of mine. The width won't be 3 inches, but the height's going to be exactly 3 inches. If it was less than 3 inches, you'd see some of the pink, which we do not want to see. And if it's more than 3 inches, then we might be cutting off more of the photo when we create the clipping mask than we want to. So I place it. Notice it's right over top center. I right click on the image and I say create clipping mask. And again, then I'm going to use my arrows to nudge it so that it looks exactly the same as this one in terms of spacing. I'll grab my next image. Oops, actually before I do that, let me click on top right because that's where I want this next image to go. Plug the image in and let's shrink it down so that it's 3 inches tall. Again, I'm holding my shift key to make sure that the perspective stays the same. It's 3 inches. I'm going to hit enter, move it here over my top right rectangle. I'll right click on the image, create clipping mask, and then nudge it over so that there's about the same spacing. Looks good. Now I'm down to my last 3 photos, so let's click on bottom left, bring this image in, bring it down, 3 inch, setting the height to 3 inches again. So again, very repetitive at this point. So just make sure, again, you want to take the care to make sure everything is sized and placed correctly so that your document looks really nice. There we go. Move it down here over my bottom left rectangle. Hit enter. And then I'll right click over here on the layers panel on the image, create clipping mask. And this one needs to be nudged over quite a bit. There it goes. So that looks good. Again, I really want to make sure that that looks similar in all of my images. I don't want them looking different or placed differently. It'll make your final product look a lot more professional, attractive, and just nice. Changing the height to 3 inches again. There we go. And remember, if I'm moving too quickly for you, it's no problem. You can pause the video at any time. Right click, create clipping mask. That one actually got placed pretty well. So I'll leave that there. And then last image, let me just click on the bottom right, bring in my image, change it to 3 inches tall. It'll be a pro by the 6th photo. And then hit enter. I'll place it right over the square that we created, create clipping mask. And then this one you can see I need to nudge all the way over to the right. There. All right, so the next thing I need to do as part of this assignment is I need to include what my f-stops were. So to do that, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to grab my text tool, actually, and I have the opportunity to choose like what color I want for my text tool. I can also use my eyedropper and choose a color. So for me, I'm going to have it be like the color of that heart on the duck, just for fun. And I'm going to type. If you want to, you can change your text type too. It's up to you. And I'm going to type F stop. I'm going to do mine in all caps. F. And then this is going to be the problem for most of us, is we don't know what f-stop we used, but it's easy to find. I just need to go to my folder with my images, click on the correct image, so make sure again you're choosing the right image. Go to properties, details, and it's f3.5. All right, so I know that over here. Now I'm gonna let my audience know that this was shot with an f-stop of f3.5. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move my text down. And I'm happy with that. It's really important. You could use a lot of different colors, but you need to make sure that it's easy to read. So this one's probably on the border in terms of easiness to read, but it still works for me. And again, you should choose a color that works for you. So now I'm going to use the same tool as I did before. I'm going to actually duplicate this layer. And I'm just going to move this across so that it lines up pretty well. And I'm going to go to my next image, and I'm going to go to properties, details, and let's see, this one was shot at f5.6. So I'm going to grab my text tool, and I'm going to change it to f5.6. All right, and you probably have a good guess what we're going to do next. We're going to grab that layer, we're going to duplicate it, grab my move tool, I'm going to move it across. Looks pretty good. I'm going to go to my next image. Again, make sure you're selecting the right one. Go to properties, detail, and that's F8. So I'll come back here, I'll grab my text tool. Because that one only has one digit, you have two choices. You can either do 8.0, right? So that you have that same symmetry, or you could move everything over. So I'm just going to actually do f8.0. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just get rid of that, F8, and then I'm going to just move this over so that it's about the same distance from my right margin of each photo. Now go ahead and hold down Control on your keyboard, highlight each of the text boxes that you just inserted, and right click, say duplicate layers, and OK. And while they're highlighted, we can just drag them straight down. Okay, and then we can just scroll through our last photos and we're gonna find the properties. So I'm just gonna make a quick note to myself. This one's F13. So I don't have to keep going back and forth. F18. And I have a guess, 22. Okay, so 13, 18, 22. So I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna come over here for each of these and I'm going to change them. 13, and then 18, and lastly 22. And so now I need to just grab my move tool and I need to make sure that they line up above, at least as closely as I can. And then there we go. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let's do a couple extra steps just to make sure that this looks really nice. So again, this is just going to be some finishing touches. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a layer. I'm going to drag that layer all the way up here to the top. And I want to choose a background layer. So I'm going to set, I'm going to choose a color. And in this case, I kind of like the idea. I didn't mean to choose blue, but I sort of started scrolling here and I like the look of that. So let's see how it looks. I'm going to say okay. Oops, sorry. Let me try that again. Here we go. Grab your rectangle tool. And let's just, on that layer that we just created, sorry about that, I'm just going to make a big rectangle that goes across the entire screen. It's actually going to go out farther than the whole screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take that rectangle and I'm going to drag it all the way down here to the very bottom of my document. It's going to give me this nice blue background. If you're not in love with that, you could change it. It's giving me a little bit of a hard time. All right. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually insert one more text box. And at the bottom, I'm going to just give it a title. So aperture and depth of field created by Chris Rubin. Okay, and I'm going to do a couple things now with that. Number one, I'm going to change the font color from red. I'm going to change it to white. I'm going to move it down here. I'm going to grab my text tool again because it looks like I have a typo. Aperture and depth of field. And then I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to go ahead and right align my text. And felt like moving on me. And then if I wanted to, I could, if I'm not a huge fan of the font that I chose, sorry. If I wanted to change my font, I can do that too. Just go up here. That might look a little bit better, easier to read. All right. So there you go. Make sure that you file, save your document. You named it at the beginning, Chris Rubin, Aperture and Depth of Field. If you didn't name it at the beginning, just go to save and make sure you give it a title. Select OK. And then please also check out the video that I created for saving your Photoshop document for the web. Thanks. Hope you enjoyed.